is Rinji Wan, and I'm receiving the Gonglan Scholarship.
Maya Cruz, and I'm a recipient of the Kennedy Drayton Scholarship.
Natalie Turner, and I am the recipient of the Martha H. Dugan Fellowship in Caring Labor.
I'm Amber White, and I am receiving the Lear Bassett Scholarship.
Stephanie Arrueda, and the award I'm receiving is the Martin and Ann Juggum Scholarship in Labor Studies.
Sophia Torres, I'm a recipient of the Martin and Ann Juggum Scholarship in Labor Studies.
Kristen Jafari, and I'm really grateful to have received the Martin and Ann Juggum Scholarship.
In Hock Choi, the Silme Domingo and Jean Viernes Scholarship.
Lily Matthew, and I received the Frank Jenkins Jr. Fellowship in Labor Studies.
My name is Jordan, and I'm receiving the Frank Jenkins Jr. Fellowship in Labor Studies award.
The labor movement and the fight for working people is important to me because I've seen firsthand how collective action can help uplift and unify lives. So when workers come together, and when we as workers come together, I've learned that we can really create a world in which we have better working conditions, safer working conditions, and really experience dignity for all working people.
Occupational safety, access to equitable health care, as well as proper health should be a human right.
Because of some personal family history with my grandfather, who is a factory worker, as well as just understanding that better exploring and improving labor laws can help give people the tools to protect them from exploitation.
I've seen firsthand how it affects my family, how hard my family has worked for me to get here through labor, and how it has affected the communities around me.
Everyone's a worker, and by fighting for labor rights, you fight for so much more than that, from environmental law to anti-militarism, and a whole other myriad of things.
Because I want equal rights for my friends and family.
I'm the child of a rank and file union member, and I'm now a union member myself. And so I've seen the differences that having a union can make, wages, the benefits, and how much it can mean for a family, for a person.
The foundational aspect in a fight for basic human dignity, like both on the national level and internationally, especially as communities are linked globally, our labor is linked globally. So the fight at home for basic labor safety precautions is going to be a fight for international human dignity.
We live in a society that systemically undervalues specific forms of labor, like caring labor. And I believe that the labor movement can shine a light on this essential yet often invisible and assumed work.
It's about so much more than just the paychecks or workforce equality. At its core, it's about the, acknowledging the intrinsic value of labor, recognizing that work is one of the most fundamental aspects of human condition, right? And work is how we shape the world around us, how we contribute, and how we find our purpose. And if we fail to honor the dignity of labor, we are not just devaluing the individual worker, we are undermining the social and the moral fabric that binds communities together.
So one issue in labor and social justice that is important to me is around caring labor. So as a gerontologist and health equity researcher, the ultimate goal of my work is to eliminate racial and geographic inequities in the provision of home and community-based services among older adults.
Child labor and exploitation of labor workers and the farm worker movement, specifically because I have family members who have come to the United States to work for a better life for their children. They've worked so hard and they've had to handle so many hardships and exploitation.
I think belonging to a community where individuals are either like undocumented farm workers or belong to a racial or ethnic minority group, it really kind of made me aware of the inequities and racism that were embedded in the healthcare system. I plan to work at the clinic that served me when I was younger, so the Yakima Valley Farm Workers Clinic, to provide preventative education as well as equitable treatment and access to necessary resources that can sometimes be forgotten, and then also help farm workers to advocate for worker rights as well as safety.
Ethical and social cultural implications of automation technology. As it kind of increasingly reshapes the workforce, the stakes are higher, more than ever. It's not just about efficiency or productivity, it's about asking deeper questions like whose labors can be or should be replaced by machines and whose labor bodies are in themselves considered as machines.
As I've become active in my own union, I've learned that a lot of things that I previously took for granted were really hardly fought for: benefits, healthcare, higher wages, etc. And I want to continue the fight.
Fighting for domestic labor, particularly, that encapsulates caregivers, maternal labor, paternal labor, housekeeping, things like that, that are generally seen as a part of everyday life, but should be compensated and respected within their own right.
Rights for undocumented immigrants and equal rights for AAPI.
It's really access to education and opportunities. I've seen firsthand how when there's a lack of awareness in working spaces, people can really get exploited and be very vulnerable. We have the Harry Bridges Center for Labor, and we just want to make sure that more people know about it. I believe that when people have access to education, they really have the opportunity to advocate for themselves and advocate for their working rights. So that's the most important issue to me.
Are underrepresented ideas of labor and laborers, people who wouldn't normally fall into categories of organized labor. Because as a historian, it's a critical part of understanding how the world has come to be the way that it is.
Yeah, I'm really interested in occupational health and safety. I work as an EMT, and I get to see firsthand people who have chronic injuries, especially in agricultural and industrial fields. And it's really important to me to protect their health and safety over the long term.
The Juckham Scholarship will allow me to complete my history thesis that I'm completing this year, as well as continue my community and labor organizing.
Personally, I think it really will help my nursing education. Like, it really will allow me to dedicate more time to my studies, as well as being able to create events that surround like equity, education, and advocacy surrounding farm workers, as well as Latinx/Hispanic communities.
Continue to support immigrants and Asian American Pacific Islander workers' rights, and be able to, fully invest in supporting this community and supporting the community in Washington and supporting the community back home in California.
I am one of the first people in my family to attend undergraduate degrees, and this fall I'll be attending my master's degree at the University of Washington in communications leadership, which I could not be more excited for. I hope to use communications as a tool to inspire people to advocate for their own rights and use their voices, a place where we can foster inclusive conversations about driving forward that critical social change that we need.
The Jenkins Fellowship will help ease the financial burden, make it so I can focus more on things like contract negotiations that my union is in right now with UW.
This scholarship has allowed my family to take a deep breath, definitely provided more financial support for me, and I hope that with this scholarship I will be able to take classes in labor studies and hopefully minor. I think that it would pair really well with my major.
It is going to allow me to continue my research, specifically my research in British Columbia, where I've been investigating fisheries, indigenous sovereignty, the rise of canneries, and international treaty making.
I will build on the work on the history of longshore labor at the Civil Rights and Labor History Consortium at the University of Washington. And my interdisciplinary research kind of zeroes in on the discourse, the conceptual formation, and the cultural imaginaries among technocrats and engineers who get involved in the development of automation technologies.
So the Juckham Scholarship will help me put a greater focus on my studies and continue integrating labor studies into my curriculum at the University of Washington. It'll also help give me the bandwidth to increase the amount of community advocacy I'm doing for workers and their health.
To support the development and completion of my dissertation. And my dissertation will aim to understand the effects of home and community-based service state policy decisions on that home and community-based service access and older adults' health outcomes.